solve large, intractable problems.
It's a new venture altogether.
Your brain is a wild horse there.
Because remember, writing is not a team sport.
You are not selling horse carriages when there are cars.
I want to be known only as the trusted advisor.
More like a tourist.
Play to Potential podcast.
Going back to one of the things you said, Sudhir, I wanted to pick up on it, this notion of potential. You said something interesting. You said for the first 10, 12 years, it's not that people don't notice. You're still marked for potential, but you possibly aren't, there isn't, let's say, enough maybe celebration or applauding going on. So I'm curious about that. But just maybe a related question is, in the book you talk about judgment, influence, and drive.
Yeah.
Being the three markers of potential.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting was you go on to say that for the first few years, it's drive, which is sort of the key axis of growth or differentiation, and then it moves to influence, and then eventually it's judgment.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about this notion of how potential plays out in Unilever, and I'm curious about these inflection points where sort of the needle moves from drive to influence to judgment.
Yeah. You know, I wrote about judgment, drive, and influence in the context of recruiting people. Because if you recruit for the immediate job at junior management in industry, right, and it's different from professional services, and there's a very vast difference between professional services and industry. In industry, at junior levels, you need drive. But if you recruit the best person for the job, you're not recruiting for the future. So when we recruit management trainees, we have to recruit for junior management, middle management, and senior management. We expect every manager of ours. So at a very early age, we've got to see whether this guy's got the potential to have judgment. Does she have the potential to be influential? Though in the first 5 years, all that's going to determine success, and one of the reasons also we don't judge too early, is that all that the first 7, 8 years tells you beyond a point is, or heavily over-indexes on the fact of how driven you are. And it's, only over a period of time that you start working as a team, and that's really where influence comes. And even after that, where you got to start making decisions. It's one of the reasons why we don't promote too early, because if you promote too early, you're promoting on drive, and you're not promoting, and then a person will hit a barrier very fast and may not have either influencing or judgment skills. So I think that's the important thing on judgment, drive, and influence. I think there are natural inflection points for these within HUL, DJ. I think the first 8, 9 years, we call it work level 2, which is kind of where people are really sort of, it's heavily, driven. And as you go a little bit more and more senior, you get some influence and judgment. I guess, in middle management, what we call work level 3, which is gently 10 to 15, 17 years, is where you sort of have to work together as an organization with various functions and other people and get work done. And I guess at senior management, really the success or failure depends on, do you get 7 out of 10 decisions? I used to have a boss who said that anybody who gets 9 or 10 out of 10 decision makers is a bad decision maker.
Not taking enough risk.
A good decision maker has to get 7. He has to get the right 7, but that's the right ratio. 5 is too low, 9 is too high. So
9 too high being too safe, is that the point?
I think it's too safe. You're analyzing too much. You're not quick enough on the decision. There is a speed factor to it.
Interesting.
You got to make those 7 have to be the important decisions. You got to let go 3 relatively low important decisions. So there's a decision making in taking decisions itself. In that sense.
Meta.
Yeah.
But a couple of questions. One is, what are the markers you look for, given that you're recruiting for judgment, influence, and drive?
Yeah.
Give us a sense of how do you pick them up? How do you suss them out early on, number one? Even at a recruiting stage, for example, number one. And number two, how do you think about the leadership development mix when you're solving for each of these 3 variables? Not that it's sort of one at a time, but I'm curious how that shifts as the axis of growth shifts.
Yeah. See, one of the big determinants of drive actually is excellence in your educational or co-curricular activity. It doesn't actually determine judgment in Indian circumstances, but it certainly determines drive, and academic is an important part of it, but exceptional performance anywhere is a tick mark on drive for us. I think when we do the lever way of recruitment, we still are one of the old-fashioned companies that do group discussions, and people think that group discussions are a problem-solving forum. They're not a problem-solving forum, they're a teamwork forum. So what we judge in group discussions is not whether you're the guy who cracked the case, but you're the guy who facilitated someone else to crack the case. How was the team dynamic? And that's what we're looking for. I guess in judgment is what we look in the personal interviews. We generally tend to ask questions regarding decisions that a person has made in life and how they think through decisions. How intuitive are they? How analytical are they? So that's what we do. But there's a fourth thing, Deepak, which is even more important. One of our former Unilever chairman, I found in our annual reports, it said that you got to recruit for character and caliber. And between the two, character is far more important than caliber. So judgment, drive, and influence are determinants of caliber, but there is a more important variable, which is character, which we actually have a fourth interview where senior people interview. So ours is a 4-step recruitment process where CV, group discussion, interview 1 and interview 2, which people say, why do you have such a long process? It's to judge. And the final one, we have senior people to see whether the person's got a character and high integrity, which for us is actually the most important.
And how do you, maybe just persisting with the theme, and for somebody, let's say, who's a student, how do you suss that out?
I think, authenticity and willing to share vulnerability in an interview, willing to sort of look deep inside. See, what do we mean by integrity? We're not judging whether a person is going to cheat the expense statement, right? The question that we're judging is a person true to themselves? When they make a mistake, are they able to kind of reflect and say it was their mistake rather than externalize? That's integrity at the end of the day. So what we look for is people who are a little bit thoughtful about themselves, who have a good, idea of what their strengths and weaknesses are. And so, so that's really how at least I suss out sort of the integrity of a person. And that's what I mean by integrity.
No, this reminds me of my previous firm, Egon Zender. When you would do your 20, 30 rounds with colleagues around the world, then the man himself would meet you in his office in Zurich. And that chat would be about just anything, right? About opera, about the world climate and whatever. So I guess in a way, I like the way you frame it as caliber versus character. By that time,
I didn't frame it. A former Unilever chairman framed it, okay. But I caught on to the framing.
Got it.